Okay. Good evening. This is the Town of Babylon Planning Board. Today is January 9th, 2023. Happy New Year, everybody. We do have one public hearing, so let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Jerry, could you lead us in the pledge? All rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Okay. Patrick Halpin.
Present.
Frank Santos. Julianne Nolan. Jerry O'Neill. Dan Truchin. Ed Wynn. Rich Casey. Nunzio Russo. Brian Zatani. Matt Esposito.
Okay. We have a quorum. We have one public hearing. Denise?
Yeah, you want to read the statement first?
Before we start the public hearing, I'd like to read this statement into the record. The planning board shall have the right to rely on any information that is presented by the applicant. If any such information is later found to be inaccurate or incorrect, the planning board may determine that any approvals, building permits, or other actions previously granted in connection with the application are null and void.
First item on the agenda, public hearing, site plan review, convenience store, job number 21-46AN, Bola EM Realty LLC, proposes to construct a 703-square-foot addition to an existing gas station, service station building for conversion to a 2,500-square-foot Bola Market convenience store and gas station, along with associated site improvements.
Okay, who is here on behalf of the applicant?
I am Hansley Mohan, Brown Altman DeLeo, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. The Commissioner of Planning on January 5th had issued a memorandum regarding this application. Have you had the opportunity to review this with your client?
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to bring to our attention regarding the memo?
I actually have a planned presentation where I will address the comments from the Planning Commissioner.
Well, do you want to address them now?
Yes. So first, I'd like to start by saying, by way of background, this property is a corner lot located within the town's e-business zoning district. The property has 3 street frontages: Deer Park Avenue, also known as New York State Route 231 to the west, Baldwin's Path to the east, and Claremont Street to the south. Abutting the property to the north are 2 residential properties, both located within the B residence zoning district. To the east, across Baldwin's Path, are residential and multi-residential properties located within the B residence and the MR multiple residence zoning districts. To the west, across Deer Park Avenue, is a shopping center located within the E-Business zoning district, which includes a fish store, gift shop, pharmacy, jewelry store, pizzeria, and Chinese restaurant. South of the property, across Claremont Street, is an orthopedics medical office located within the E-Business zoning district. It is worth noting that this mix of B residence and E-Business parcels is common for this area along Deer Park Avenue. From the town's boundary line down to Oak Street, there is a continuous mix of B residence and E-Business lots. The property currently operates as a gasoline and service station with 3 auto repair bays. The property is currently improved with a 1-story, 1,797 square foot masonry building, 3 multi-product fuel dispensers, and an overhead fuel canopy. According to certificate of occupancy number 53212, the property has operated as a gasoline service station since November 29, 1966. As noted by the Planning Department in the memorandum dated January 5th, there are existing encroachments on the property from the 2 residential properties to the north. And as stated in the memo, planning has requested that we address the impacts of these encroachments at tonight's hearing. So submitted for the board's review, we have a copy of the colored site plan on the display board to my right. I also want to note that we also have Mr. Christopher Tartaglia of High Point Engineering here as well, who will be able to speak more to the site layout and site design if the board has any additional questions. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I do have a set of handouts that I'd like to present to the board.
Hold on for 1 second.
Yes.
This memo dated January 5th has a whole series of conditions, covenants, and restrictions.
Yes.
Are there any items that are listed here on pages 1 through 4 that your client has any issues with, any concerns, anything that you would like to bring to our attention before we get into the presentation regarding the conditions, covenants, and restrictions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
So you have no objections to any of the things outlined here?
Yes, no
Is that-
objections.
Okay, thank you very much. Please proceed.
Yes. Matt? Oh, yeah. Okay. Submitted for the board's review as Exhibit 1 is a copy of the property survey prepared by Gala Surveying Group with the existing encroachments highlighted in red. As shown on the survey, there are certain improvements, including a driveway, shed, and white vinyl PVC fence that benefits the owners of 2 Kossuth Street, which encroach onto the subject property. The encroachments extend southerly, approximately
Hey,
14...
slow down, slow down, slow
Yep.
down, slow down. We're looking at this, so give us time so we can
Yeah,
get
of course.
oriented. Matt, is this the same exhibit that is in our packet? Oh, all right, okay, fine.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So yes, just to clarify, so we're first looking at the residential property located on 2 Kossuth Street. So there is currently an existing driveway and a white vinyl PVC fence and a shed being used by the adjacent property owners. These encroachments extend southerly, approximately 14 feet, onto our property and extends along the entire common boundary line between the 2 properties in an east to west direction. Looking next to the property located at 2119 Deer Park Avenue to the west, there is a wooded area being used by the property owners, which also encroach onto the property. Now, on February 2nd, 2022, our office obtained written approval from the owner of 2119 Deer Park Avenue to remove the encroaching fence from beyond the property line. With respect to 2 Kossuth Street, our office was previously working with the owner of the neighboring property through her counsel to resolve this matter. We had exchanged correspondence dating back to April of 2020 regarding the removal of the encroachments, and in May of 2021, the neighboring property owner executed a boundary line agreement between herself, the applicant, and Blue Hills Fuel LLC, the fee owner of the subject parcel, to remove the encroachments. However, before we were able to submit the executed boundary line agreement to the Suffolk County Clerk's office for recording, we were informed by the neighbor's attorney that the owner had sold the property to the current owners. We had received no prior notice that a closing for this property was scheduled to take place before we received the executed boundary line agreement. In August of 2021, we spoke with the attorney for the new property owners, the current property owners, and were informed that the new owners were aware of the ongoing boundary line issue. We sent the attorney a copy of the previously executed boundary line agreement for his review, and shortly thereafter, the attorney provided our office with the names of the current fee owners to incorporate into a new boundary line agreement with the same terms and provisions. After being informed by the attorney in September of 2021 that the new owners were going to be signing the agreement we had sent them, we failed to receive any response from the attorney from that moment forward. As will be explained in further detail by Mr. Tartaglia, the site plan prepared by High Point Engineering shows the existing encroachments from 2119 Deer Park Avenue, that's the residential property to the northwest, as being removed and the fence to be relocated as previously agreed to. The existing encroachments from 2 Kossuth Street, which are to the northeast, are shown as existing to remain. Also, a handout copy of the site plan is included as exhibit number 2. Nevertheless, the applicant is proposing a substantial landscaping buffer between the subject property and the adjacent property owners to the north. Again, I will refer to Mr. Tartaglia's presentation to discuss the proposed landscaping in further detail. It should also be noted that the primary use of the property will remain as it has existed since 1966. In fact, the proposed redevelopment seeks to eliminate the existing auto repair bays, which is a more intense use. The expansion and conversion of the existing building into a Bolo Market convenience store, along with the other associated site improvements, will be a significant aesthetic improvement to what currently exists. A copy of the colored elevations have also been included in your exhibit package as Exhibit 3. Accordingly, we submit that the proposed redevelopment will have no adverse impact to the adjacent residential property owners, as the owner of 2119 Deer Park Avenue has already consented to the relocation of the encroachments, and the encroachments from 2 Kossuth Street will remain as they currently exist, and will also, in fact, be supplanted by the additional plantings and landscaping buffer we are proposing. Tonight, the applicant requests planning board approval to redevelop the property as shown on the site plan provided. And pursuant to section 213-423 of the town code, we are also requesting planning board special exception permit to allow the proposed convenience store at the property. Now, at this time, I'd like to call Christopher Tartaglia of High Point Engineering to discuss the site design and site layout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any of the board members have any questions regarding what we've just heard?
Hello. Hi there. The fence on the Deer Park Avenue property has not been removed yet, is that correct?
As to our knowledge, we believe it has not been removed yet, but the plan is to have it removed, ever since we received the written approval to do so.
Okay. And your application is not affected at all by the encroachment on the Casa property?
Correct. We have made plans to work around the existing encroachments to allow for the redevelopment, and we will work around the existing encroachments.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Sir? Okay, Chris? Sorry. Rich?
So we had previously been working on a boundary line agreement with that property owner to remove all the existing encroachments, including the driveway and the shed. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get it, receive the executed copy before the property was sold. So as it stands right now, we are going to leave everything for 2 Cossett Street as is, untouched, and we are simply going to develop a landscaping buffer within our side of the fence, and we'll leave their encroachments as is.
The shed that is there, do you know if that has any kind of permit?
Not to our knowledge, no. That shed is solely located on what should be our side of the property line, but it's beyond the property fence that currently exists and is being utilized by the adjacent residential owner.
Right, but you're asking this board to approve a site plan with a structure that's not approved or legalized?
To our knowledge, we had not done the due diligence into see whether the shed had received any permits prior, but given that the adjacent property owner was not willing to meet us halfway to execute a boundary line agreement for us to remove the shed and the other encroachments, this was the meet in the middle, so to speak, that we could come up with in order to work around the issue of trying to redevelop the property while also dealing with the adjacent property owner's reluctance to sign the boundary line agreement for us to remove the shed.
Yeah, we're all for good solutions that work for everybody, but I think we may have to look at this very closely, what you come up with as a proposed solution, because this private boundary line agreement doesn't address the status of the building construction and what's legal or not there. So, you can work with the planning staff and maybe come up with something that'll, satisfy everyone.
Yes, and so just to clarify, just so the board is aware, so the applicant is actually the lessee of the property. They're not the property owner. So we had deferred, all matters regarding resolving this dispute. Once our efforts did not reach a fruitful resolution, we deferred to the property owner to handle this boundary line issue with their neighbors, since they are in fact the fee owner. We did make our attempt in our good faith effort, since we were redeveloping the property, but given that we weren't able to reach the conclusion that we had hoped for with the adjacent property owner, we now defer to the property owner to handle this as they see fit, since they are in fact the fee owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Tartaglia from High Point Engineering, 1860 Walt Whitman Road, Melville, New York, 11747.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, Mr.
Please
Chairman.
proceed.
So I really have an abbreviated presentation tonight. I think Mr. Mohan's done a good job of describing the development. I believe the board and the planning staff fully understand it. So I'm here to answer any questions, and I was here to speak with regard to the encroachment, but I believe that that's been pretty well vetted. The only thing I would add to that is that understanding the comments from the gentleman to the rear and the complexities that this poses to this board, I would also just say that this encroachment has existed for at least as long as we've been involved with this site, which is about 5 or 6 years. And I was very involved with Hansley and his firm in trying to get the neighbor to move the encroachments, and the speed with which that happened has negatively impacted our client, who is the applicant, who is BOLA, in being able to redevelop this site and make an acceptable rate of return. So we would appreciate the board and staff's understanding of that matter, that we're merely trying to make a significant investment in this property to hopefully get the business back up and running properly. And this encroachment is not negatively affecting our ability to use this property, and presumably is also benefiting the neighbor as well, as he's the one that installed it. Although the current property owner has really thrown a wrench into the works. So that's really the sum and substance, and I'm certainly here to answer any site plan or any other related questions that anybody may have.
So just so I understand this, Bola is leasing the property, and the property that we're talking about is a part of the leasehold.
Yes, sir.
Did you say that the owner also owns the property behind, leases the property behind it, or is that?
No, so the property behind, which is the owner of the encroachments, if you will, to the back here.
Yes.
So that property recently changed hands, as Mr. Mohan had indicated.
Right.
We had a boundary line agreement and an agreement with that owner to remove the encroachments, and one night they skipped town and said they sold the property. It was a little bit weird, to say the least, but the new owner has not been nearly as cooperative in terms of moving the encroachments or signing the agreement to do so. And again, we're just here to try to move this along and get this facility rebuilt and in a fashion where it can do some decent business, because right now it is struggling.
Now, we understand the improvements, but I'm just thinking about that. Now, so in other words, just so I'm clear, the leaseholder, there's no dispute that building that probably doesn't have a permit, I presume, is it a temporary building? Is it something that was just put there as a storage facility?
Yeah, it's a wooden shed. I would presume you're right that there probably are no permits, because
So
I don't know how they
doesn't
would have
the-
gotten
Why
it.
doesn't the owner of the property just take it down?
If it were that easy, Chairman Halpin, it would have been done. It's unfortunately not that easy.
Why can't they take that down if it's on their property?
Well, they can, it's probably been there a long time, they don't want to take it down, so it hasn't come up before, but, we don't know the size of it exactly.
Discussion
We can
on what
calculate
you
that.
can add
In an E district, you
in
need
terms of the
permits for
ability to
things,
remove
so
something
it
somebody
creates
else
a problem
installed.
for both, property owners and the lessee. They have to come up with a solution that will be acceptable to the planning, department and board. I don't know what that will be just yet, but
Okay,
you
now,
can't legalize your property on when it's not on your structure when it's not on your property. So it's a problem, but maybe the size of the shed doesn't require a permit, or there's some other way to address this. I don't know at this point.
Yeah.
this provides a much better understanding of what you're dealing with, this photo from, that we're
Yeah,
looking at now.
just to add, and as mentioned previously, so if Bola were the property owner, that fence and encroachment would be gone. As lessees, I believe they've got some limited rights to go in there. They're not the property owner, and Blue Hills Fuel, who is the property owner, owns thousands of properties, and this is just one in a massive portfolio that they're still getting rent, so perhaps they're not that interested to get involved. It's sort of a quandary that our client's stuck in the middle of, unfortunately.
Okay, understood. So why don't you show us what the development's going to look like?
Certainly. So looking to my right here, and as shown on the board there in black and white, essentially the proposed improvements are relatively minor. Starting with the building, we are adding a 700 square foot addition. So the total building will be 2,500 square feet. The addition is off in the easterly direction. That will be fully converted to a convenience store. There will be no more auto repairs. Off to the right side of that is going to be the trash enclosure area, which will be behind a solid PVC fence. And that enclosure actually follows all the way around the building to also enclose the ground-mounted air conditioning condensing units. So there will be buffering to the neighbors to the north. Additionally, there is some significant landscaping, both existing trees and proposed, that will be infilled to provide even more significant buffering, both to the property that is located on the east side and also to the west, as indicated. And the west, of course, does show that existing fence being removed and the new landscaping being located up to the property line. Moving down to the south, the existing canopy is to remain. That canopy is over 3 pump islands. Currently, we're going to expand the pump islands located to the east side, take the one from the center, move it to the outside, install a new one to the southerly side, so there'd be a total of 4 pump islands or 8 fueling positions. That's an increase over the 6 that are there now. The existing underground storage tanks are double wall fiberglass. They will remain intact and unchanged. One important revision that we're making, and this was done in conjunction with the folks in planning and the highway department, is we're closing the curb cut that's located up closer to the residential uses to the north on Baldwin's Path. And we're relocating that curb cut further south to just above the stop bar. The existing other curb cut on Claremont Street, which is located a little bit further south, will remain, as will the 2 curb cuts on Deer Park Avenue. And just of note, we have filed an application with the State Department of Transportation. We're anticipating a letter of no impact from them simply because we're not making any substantive changes to the use or to the layout of the property. But we do await their response in terms of any modifications they may wish to make. But generally speaking, how the property flows, because Deer Park Avenue is divided, generally speaking, vehicles enter through the southerly curb cut, access the pump islands or the building heading north, and then exit northbound onto Deer Park Avenue. Just as a final note, we're adding some significant landscaping along the entire perimeter of the site. I discussed earlier along the northerly portion, but also in between the curb cuts along all roadways, and there's actually a fairly significant landscape area being proposed right out at the corner where it can make the most impact on passersby. That's a general overview. I can certainly answer any
Matt,
specific questions.
can you keep this up on the screen? I just want to take a look at what was just described to us as to what's actually there, not the aerial. Thank you. So those are the 2 where he has his cursor. Those curb cuts will be moving, as you said, right there, Matt? Is that from there to there? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions about that? Leanne?
Hi, could you please tell me the direction of the tankers that are going to come in for refueling?
Yes. So the way they come in today, which is the way I believe they will continue to do so because it works perfectly, is they're heading northbound on Deer Park Avenue, make a right turn into the site. They sit over top of the tanks in this area here, and then make a left-hand turn to head out towards the northerly curb cut, and then continue northbound on Deer Park Avenue.
And do you know if they have specific times for deliveries?
Generally speaking, they're off-peak. One of the most important nuances of BOLA is that they actually own their own transport trucks. You might have seen them on the road. One of the few gas station operators that does so. Typically, they contract it out to a third party. So BOLA does all their own deliveries, so they're able to really control their destiny in terms of when they deliver, how much they deliver, et cetera. So with that, the one thing that they always strive not to do or never to do is to bring it in during peak hours, which would be the peak morning rush and the peak evening rush. So generally, we try to bring them in either sometime late morning, anywhere between 11 and say 3 o'clock. If not, then just in the early evening after 6 o'clock and between 6 and 8.
So my concern here is that if they are during those high peak hours and a tanker comes in and you have cars fueling under the canopies and blocking these 2 roadways, and I've seen that in other locations.
Well, we've got an existing gas station here, so the good news is that doesn't happen now.
But you're expanding.
Well, we're redeveloping. It's still going to be a gas station site, and I think as I just described, we're going to bring them in during non-peak hours, which would minimize the ability for those conflicts to occur. Again, I think an important response to that as well is we're actually expanding the number of pump islands. So what that means is if there is a tanker on the property doing the delivery, which takes about 20 to 25 minutes in total, as customers pull in, they'll have additional choices to which pump to bring their car to. When you have less pumps, they're sort of stuck going to the same, toward a pump that might be near the truck. But there will be Assuming that this side of the pump would be blocked, which it wouldn't be because the truck would be well away from that. But even if those two islands were not used, we'll still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fueling positions, which is the same that we have today.
And not only if your tanker is there fueling and trying to make that left out, you have parking stalls there, so potentially you could have customers in the store, so he's still sitting there. So what time, you said during off-peak, and the food service there is all prepackaged?
We are actually, let me show an elevation of the building, excuse me. Oh, okay, it's up on the screen. Thanks, Matt. So we are proposing within this building a Tim Hortons coffee counter. It's a 18-foot-long counter, which will have pastry, donuts, and coffee offering. Bola has them now at about 38 of their locations currently on Long Island and in New York City. So what that offers, it's a pseudo Dunkin' Donuts type offering in that you go to the counter, there's a person behind the counter who gives you your order. You can order online ahead of time, walk in and just pick up. But they have that, again, at several other of their facilities. And they find that it obviously, because it's a coffee and breakfast sandwich type operation, that it primarily see most morning traffic for that. In the afternoon and the evening, it tends to slow down significantly. So relating to the deliveries, this would probably be a good candidate for one that came in after the morning rush because that business would die down.
And how many employees are there?
So there are 2 behind the counter at the Tim Hortons, and typically 1 would operate the gas station, so a maximum of 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Dan?
So my question has to do with the tanker. When it comes in, will it be blocking the 2 entrances on, what street is that? Baldwin's Path?
I don't know if you want to look at their screens in front of you. Maybe I'll just go back to this. So I'll just project. So the tanker would be located roughly in this position. This is a little bit longer than the tanker would be, but it would be located roughly here. So there could be blocking of the access to Baldwin's Path, but there'll still be a full movement curb cut located down south. And again, this is for 20 to 25 minutes once every 3 to 4 days. And it happens at every gas station that you all pass every day.
Yeah, and
several
sometimes
times
they
a
block
week.
the road and stuff, so that's why we're asking.
Yeah. So that's why we have the 2 curb cuts, so we don't have to block anything.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions, Frank?
In the aerial view, showed that there was a handicap stall, right, where it looks like you're moving the apron to the south,
Pull that up.
or will that affect that at all? And if it's right there?
So the handicap stall is located right where it has to be, which is right at the entrance to the
You're
building.
moving the one that's on the aerial?
Yes, sir. Yeah, code would make us put it right at the front door, so they've got the closest path.
And do you have an air pump station?
We will, yeah. I believe it's located on the plan. Good job of landscaping it. My drafters have hidden it from view, but it
There
will
you
be
go.
there.
It's right under the tree. That way, if it's a hot summer day, it'll be cool at least while you're
Exactly.
filling your tires.
Yes. Thank you, Matt.
Oh, okay.
My eyes are getting older every day.
All
I
right, it's over there?
apologize.
All right, there we go. Any other questions? No? Julianne, you look like you have a question.
It's just the location of where the tankers have to fuel and that air pump now, because you have yet another vehicle or 2 sitting there.
Well, they'll just have to wait.
Yeah, again, the good news is there's a second access into the site, which is quite frankly a lot better than some of the smaller stations that are in this town and others. So giving the customers the option to have another means of ingress or egress is really all that's needed, and that's why this site is designed as such.
All right. Why don't you show us, well, you did show us that. Did you show us the back of what that would look like? Jerry, have you noticed the back? Well, you better start doing your job. No, Jerry obsesses over what the neighbors are going to say. No objections, okay, there we go. We just want to get that on the record. All right, any other questions by the board? Okay, is there anyone from the public that would like to address the board regarding this application? Sir? No? Okay. You have no questions? All right, all good. All right, fair enough. All right, thank you very much. Matt, where are we
Thank you.
with the reviews? Okay, so we need a motion to extend the record to January 30th. Motion by Frank to extend the record, second by Dan.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
The record is extended. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Happy New Year again.
You too.
We'll see you again.
Nice handouts.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right, we are going to be moving to our work session, so we will end the broadcast of this portion of our planning